Welcome back. Let's talk about something that we're going to work on in this section and probably the most exciting things, at least for me, when it comes to AWS, and that is Lambda functions. You see, traditionally, we've built and deployed web applications where we have some control over the HTTP request. Just like we've built our SmartBrain app, we kind of control everything, every little piece. We're responsible for that server, for deploying that Express server and making sure that our resources are set. We're responsible for what we call provisioning and managing the resources. That is, making sure that we're deploying to the right machine, it's able to scale, and all these configuration items. Now, there are a few issues with this method of just doing everything your own. One, we're charged for keeping the server up even when we're not actually using or serving out any requests. For example, if nobody is checking out our website, SmartBrain, and the server is still up and running, listening to connections, well, we're paying money to have that server running. That's not really efficient. We're also responsible for making sure that the server is running, that there's maintenance done on it, that we make upgrades whenever there needs to be upgrades, and all these resources. Again, another layer of headaches. And then we also have to worry about security, making sure that everything that we do with the server is secure, and we won't have bad people being able to access it. So as our usage scales, and then finally, as more and more users start using our service, we have to make sure that our server can adapt to it, but at the same time, when it's not being used, it isn't charging us so much money because we have to keep it running. And especially for smaller companies and individual developers, this can be a huge headache. You start getting distracted with all this management of your resources from other more important things like actually building your application and writing code. Now, at larger companies, this thing we call infrastructure usually has its own team called the infrastructure team. So with these large companies, we can use their expertise and their teams so that we can just focus on code and just hand things off to them. And as developers, we've been looking for solutions like these to these problems for a long time. And this is where the idea of serverless comes in. Serverless allows us to build applications where we simply hand the cloud provider, so Google, Amazon, or Microsoft, our code, and it runs it for us. Just says, hey, tell me what I need to run, and I'll take care of everything for you. They also make sure that we only get charged for what we actually used, because they can monitor what code gets executed and what resources it actually consumes. For example, for seasonal things like Christmas shopping, well, the cloud provider can simply add more servers, more power to the requests, and when it dies down, it can remove those servers. And because they can use those servers for other companies, they don't care that we're not using it anymore. And then finally, our code is running in a secure environment where the cloud provider just takes care of everything for us and making sure that everything's up to date and secure. All right, that sounds really great. I'm sold. Let's start doing this. Well, let's use Amazon Lambda. And Lambda, like I said, lets you run a function. And this is how it's going to work. And we're going to implement this in the course. When a user makes a request, let's say we just have a function that console logs, I'm so fancy. All we need to do is do let's say a fetch call from our app to the URL that the Amazon Lambda provides for us. And we just upload this code to Amazon Lambda. And as soon as we do a fetch call to that URL, it's going to log, I'm so fancy. Now, how does this work underneath the hood? You see, the cloud provider creates a container, something that we know and we've learned in Docker, and it runs this function inside of it. And what happens if 5 users at the same time request this function? Well, they're going to create 5 separate containers for each user and respond with console.log, I'm so fancy. All they do is simply store the function that we give it in their database, and whenever it's being called, it will grab it from the database and actually run it. Now, you may see a problem with this, and this is actually called the cold start problem. That is, they have to grab this function from the database, which is just stored as a string, and then run it inside of a container. And that takes time. And that is the one downside with Amazon Lambda. When it first runs a function, it takes a little bit of time. I mean, when we say a little bit of time, it's still Amazon, so it's fast. But once the function has been run and now more and more users are using it, then it's fine because it's in a container. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But the beauty of this is that this function is only going to be run when we trigger it. And when it's not run, Amazon is not charging us at all. So this is great if you have seasonal bursts in your company, or you want to do something that isn't running constantly, something that only occasionally runs. All right, enough talk. We need to code to actually understand this concept. So in the next video, we're going to get started with Amazon Lambda.